Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the RangerRob Country Living Channel podcast. Here, I had to turn off the volume and the other thing here. So, welcome to the show. That's too quick.
That's your short. That is your shortest intro ever.
Short.
Or shorter, yeah.
It was a little too short because it doesn't give me time to switch the other screen. So anyway, guys, welcome to the show. In our podcast, we are live. I want to remind everybody that we love to have you talk in the comments with us, which I got to switch over. I see Small Town Tourist. That's John Smith is with it. He says, this is going to be good. Yeah, we got an interesting subject today. But we got to go through some of our other rigmaroles. But before we do, I don't know if we're going to have John and Debbie with us tonight. They said they're having some internet problems, but if they pop in, they pop in. I got to thank ahead of time. Yesterday, they came over with their trailer and took an old stove I was trying to get rid of over here and took some stuff to the dump for me. And then they brought some Dungeness crab over. And so nice. I generously gave them zucchini. I don't know if that was a very fair trade.
No, boy, I don't know.
They're still helping us out with the estate stuff.
Anytime you can trade vegetables for protein, that's a good day. That's not bad at all.
So yeah, and luckily I made some fresh salads. So we had crab, Dungeness crab over salad last night for dinner. So good.
Nice.
All right, so before we get going, first of all, we get us all introed here, and the next thing you need to make sure is how to find us. So if you like podcasts and you like the audio version of podcasts, there is an audio version of all of our shows, and our base is out of Spreaker. And if you have a piece of software on your cell phone that's listening to where you listen to your podcasts and stuff, we're listed in iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the normals. So all you have to do is go into your search category and it'll automatically search those different platforms and just type in RangerRob Country Living Podcast, and it should show up. And you just put us in your subscriptions, and you can listen to all 45 shows because this is shows. This is episode 45, so it's really getting up there. So congrats, peoples. Hi, Jack.
Didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, I was yakking a lot there. So good to see you, Jack. And I gotta check see what. Okay. Yeah. Our internet here in Central Oregon it depends who you got and what time of day it is. So you never know. So I want to make sure you address that. So anyway, guys, the last thing is I want to make sure is if you like to leave comments or be in our chat, please do. If you catch the show after it's live, please leave comments in there and let us know what you're thinking, some of the things you'd like us to talk about, any questions, anything like that, leave that in the comments. But right now it's live, so we can see you guys right now in real time. And last but not least, if you'd like to be part of our show, let us know if you got things you're doing on your homestead, or it doesn't have to be a homestead. If you're in the gardening, doing all kinds of things like that, prepping, self-reliance type of things, give us a holler and we'll see. I'd love to interview you and find out some of the things you guys are doing. And then the touch up, because I always put a little bit of my personal stuff in the front because the rest of the floor is for you guys. We're killing it on tomatoes. We're starting to get our tomatoes in through our hydroponics and our conventional. And so next week, luckily Sherry's sister is coming down because we'll be doing a lot of canning for tomatoes. And so it's salsa. Well, it's not salsa time for us. It'll be sauces and Pico de Gallo. So when you make Pico de Gallo with Jetstar tomatoes, it's amazing. So that's something we'll definitely we'll make some and pass.
You can bring some to my house.
Yeah. We'll be the judge of that one, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, I can guarantee you, because we've been trying. So the first time we ever made Pico de Gallo was last year with our Jetstars, and Sherry's sister was here, and we made it. It was like, this is amazing. So then, after over time, we tried to make it again with conventional, normal kind of tomatoes. We have not been able to reproduce the flavor. Anyway, so I'm telling you, it's that different. Jetstar is an amazingly sweet tomato. So anyway, we will make a batch for everybody that we can catch up with. So
Nice.
anyway, so that, and we're killing it with corn. I don't know if you guys have seen on the videos, we do 5 different species of corn, and we did it by duration of how long it takes to grow. So we went from a 69-day early sweet corn to an 89-day corn. So we got 5 rows of different kinds of species, and they're just insanely going crazy. So I think we're going to be actually getting our first corn within a week. And then as the days go on, we should start getting corn by the end of August. So yeah, amazing that corn. And we've been doing injection fertilization in it with a little bit of hydroponics technology. So
Wow.
that's how we kind of get the a little extras into our corn. So anyway, we all this has been on our videos. So all the things I'm talking about has been on our videos, and what's coming up on our videos, you're going to see a lot more this week and next week on the tomatoes and some of the things like that. Last but not least, we also have a little piglet that's been sick, and it's a respiratory thing. It's not a pneumonia. So people were wondering what have we been checked? We actually took it to a vet. Lungs are clear. So, but since it's our first piglet group that we ever did, we kind of went overboard, you might say, and we went in and she got antibiotics, still having a little trouble. Now we're doing another kind of steroid kind of thing with this little piglet to see if we can recover it. A lot of people would just give up and just put them out. But anyway, so all the piglets are doing great, except this one's got this kind of cough thing, but he's doing better. Aimee actually suggested maybe the steroid thing might be the way to go. And we have noticed his appetite's up. He's doing better. He's got one more shot to go. It's actually a little girl. And anyway, so I just want to say that, yeah, we're kind of hemming and hawing because we like to go with organic. We don't want to be giving chemicals to our animals and stuff. But we felt since this was our first time, it'd be a good time to learn a little bit about how far do you go with a piglet, and when you got one that's sick or things like that. Things happen. We all know that on Homestead. So, and moving on real quick, I want to thank John and Debbie for the help with the real estate stuff, estate sale. We just gave 3 chickens over to Aimee's daughter. So we're trying to downsize the number, and that's actually, that video will be out, I think, tomorrow. But we gave her daughter 3 little Rhode Island Reds, and so you need more chickens. But it's helping us because I felt like I had a little bit too many. Well, the reason I got so many chickens, I bought 17, is I got a discount if I bought more than 15.
There you go.
So
Great,
I didn't
great.
really need 15. I just needed 10 and 2 roosters. Anyway, so anyway, that's kind of the story behind that. But these are beautiful chickens. They're kind of teenagers, so you should be getting some beautiful brown eggs probably in October, I'm guessing. So, and your daughter, I got to tell the story on this before we get into our subject. The daughter named them, immediately. And in the way she told them apart is she put fingernail polish on each foot. So she's got them color coded.
And
She
when
showed Dale when he came over the other day.
and it was like this old man been around the block a time or two. I had no idea in hell why the chicken's toenails were painted. And I go, duh, tell them apart, type of. It was awesome.
Last
thing I got to remember is, Aimee, you have a swap meet coming up.
I do. Tomorrow and Saturday, the Terrebonne Grange, there's a flea market. So thank you for mentioning that. It's 9 to 4. I'd been advertising 9 to 3. It's 9 to 4. Friday and Saturday at the Terrebonne Grange. We went and set up this afternoon, and there is some great stuff. I had to hold myself back from shopping the other tables. I was like, ooh, I'm buy that. I'm buy that. I'm buy that.
So they're literally open all day on Friday and Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay, so no Sunday stuff. Okay, cool.
Right. Just Friday and Saturday.
Try to swing by. I've never been to that swap meet. So,
and the people are the best part. They're so sweet, and they remind me of a lot of good memories from my childhood with my grandparents. You think Grange, and that's kind of the feelings that it brings back to me. So it's a great time. Thank you for mentioning that, Rob.
No problem. When I think of Granges, you remember I was a square dance caller. So, we got all of our square dances and Granges up in Washington State. So, yeah. So every time I think of Granges, I think of square dancing. So, guys, we got, I think I got all the main things there covered. Our subject today is homestead fears. And so that's a really broad subject. And I think I'll start with Aimee because you kind of got probably more of a homestead than the rest of us.
Oh,
But I do have a list of things. I got a list of things that I'm sure we'll build off of what you bring up, Aimee. Um,
okay.
but I mean, this can go from um, several things. I'll bring up a couple of subjects, but I'm going to let you. What in the top of your head? What are some of the main homestead fears you have that could be a problem to your homestead? Not. I mean, of something that could go wrong, or something it could break, or something like that. What are some of the things that come to mind when we say what's some of your homestead fears?
Um, a wildfire is my top one. In
That's a good
a
one.
wildfire that we would have to evacuate as many animals as we could, because obviously you would want to take everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and we should put this in the hat for a short version for another time. Put it in Dale's hat, but wildfire. Not being able to buy food for the animals, the ones that I have to buy food for, food shortages, wildfire. We have a generator, so electricity going off isn't that concerning. However, if I was out of fuel for the generator, or if the water pump on the well, if there was a malfunction there, we've had to be reminding a child around here to refill the horse's water trough and keep it full. And there have been a few times that it was not as full as needs to be.
Yeah.
So, water is a huge issue. What if the well went out and we couldn't get the water
So
out of the
I have
well?
a quick question on that subject alone. Have you ever thought about, and I've been thinking about it too, of having a manual pump put onto your regular well, so if the well went down, you could at least still do a manual pumping thing? I don't even know if you could do that, but I just kind of
Yeah.
I like to look into that.
Yeah. Is it
Problem.
possible, Dale?
It's possible. Is it efficient? No, not probably not going to be efficient. I mean, I'd be thinking more in the terms of some kind of a storage tank system. I think, and everything. And you talk about that wildfire thing and everything. I've got a huge background in that, and I can come over and we can walk around. We can look at this thing, and equipment manufacturing, wildland firefighter, all that type of stuff. I know what that is, and what that will look like, and so that would take one type of thing off of there. We've got a couple of the old hand pumps. Diane's got a couple of them around here for ornamental purposes. You're depending on how deep your well is, you're not going to hand lift that stuff. If you're any deeper than 50 feet, it's not going to happen. And
Wow.
everything.
I'm thinking the big ones, the iron kind of pump. I'm just wondering if you could actually incorporate that into your well system as a secondary system. Like I said, for efficiency, no, I'm not looking for efficiency. I'm looking for water. Just
Emergency.
plain cooking water, drinking water coming out of our well. But I'm not going to be, obviously, I'm not going to water my entire yard or anything like that. But
no,
I mean, but if our well goes down, just like she brought up, we're out of water. We don't have water other than what we've stored and stuff like that. So I'm curious, and I want to do the research of, can we get a full-size, heavy-duty iron kind of pump installed on a wellhead as a secondary? I wonder if anybody's ever done that.
Oh, I'm sure somebody's done it and everything. There's just a ton of different, things that you can look at in those situations. And that certainly is one of them, because, I mean, that gets away from the electricity, the generator problem and everything else like that. And just jumping back to what Aimee said about the wildfire, evacuating animals, not going to happen. Okay, that's not a viable option at all, to load everybody up and try and get them out of there in the mess that would happen. And it would have to be an extreme circumstance that would happen and be necessary. And so therefore you're better off to be able to, have your place set up and defend your place appropriately. And if that means you're looking at 1,000-gallon storage tank or something like that, there's a lot worse things you could spend money on. and everything, and that gives you additional element of stored water, which is, not so great in the wintertime because it's just a big ice cube. But I mean, in the time of the year that you need it, and that's definitely something to look at.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
And when you say fear, Rob, that's what I'm thinking is like worst case scenario. Like I have nightmares about I have nightmares where I'm loading horses who are scared in a tray, you know what I mean? And the kids are crying. Like that's a nightmare. When I think greatest fear, I think, what are my nightmares?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one right there, and you have to look at yourself and say, do I want to be in that situation? And is this practical? Are we going to be able to load horses, cows, rabbits, kids, everything else up like this? And that situation, if you're ever in it, is going to develop a lot faster than you're going to be able to deal with like that and everything. So that's how you kind of got to just, figure out how to stay put and fight it out yourself. And it can be done. It's not unsafe or anything like that.
Yeah.
Actually, to add to that, I mentioned the other day, if anybody ever watched that Homestead Rescue. And so, example, one of the shows I did of Homestead in Hawaii is they were having trouble with being too close to the lava fields. A lot of their property got destroyed by it, but some of it they were able to save. And one of their biggest fears was losing their sheep. So actually, when they rebuilt their holding sheds for the sheep, they actually put it on wheels. So in case there was an emergency of it, like the volcano goes up again and they need to get out of there, they just herd all their sheep right into this barn type thing they designed, but it can be hooked up to the back of a truck and out the door. So they could be that mobile. So, I mean, if you really, really wanted to take that serious, I guess you could have something built where you just herd them in, hook up and go. But I mean, obviously, if we got a fire that's really close, you don't have time for that. But
because
if we knew down the road that you had time, and had some emergency equipment for your animals pre-built, you might be able to pull that off.
Because those animals do what you want them to every time you try and herd them, right?
And especially in an emergency.
Yeah, and you're all amped up, and the animals vibing off of you and everything like that. So, I mean, the smaller stuff, that's fine, but can we condense them all real close and keep this thing from getting us? Sure, we can. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So since we kind of jumped onto your water thing, what other fears have you had that kind of get to you, that concern you on your homestead?
Water, fire. The other one was not being able to find food shortages for the animals, not being able to find food for the animals. And I know I've talked about on previous shows that we feel pretty good right where we are as far as hay. After the Mar-a-Lago raid the other day, everybody's wheels start turning in their heads if they weren't already. And so I was kind of mentally taking stock of what we have, don't have. And I told Dustin, I said, Meatloaf is low on grain. And when Meatloaf doesn't have grain on the milking stand, she gets grumpy. And I said, you need to go and restock our grain. And so he did. And he was able to get more than the 5 bags that the one store had been limiting us to. And then that we got quite a bit of grain, and that made me feel really good.
Good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong stocking up on any of that stuff now. It's just money in the bank.
Yeah, I mean, I even do it for our pets, our dogs and cats. I just rebuilt so sometimes I get lazy and I kind of fall behind, but I always have a bag or two of extra 50-pound bags for the dogs and stuff. And I had to tap into it because I just didn't get around it. And before you know it, it's like, all right. So I went to Bi-Mart and built it all back up.
Good. It feels good when you have that. And a lot of people, there's limitations. I know that everybody can't do that. You might not have the space to store it. You might not have the money to go. Some people are budgeted so tightly that they have this much money for dog food once a month, etc. So I know that there's limitations to being able to have extras that way. But we found this place in Bend that sells the 50-gallon drums And I think they get them from restaurants that don't use them anymore. So they're not gross. They were food grade. And we had picked up a few and we're using that for grain storage. And then today we were able to pick up, I think, like 5 more barrels, which increases how much, food we can store. So I'm like, okay, just getting it set.
Yep.
And you're just kind of chipping away at it a little bit at a time. And every time something like that comes along, you jump on it, take advantage of it. You're just that much, farther down the road on this thing. And we're going along great right now. The sun's out, the hay's growing, they're cutting hay, the cows are looking awesome out in the fields, and everything else. Everything's going to be great for the next couple of months, and then we head into winter, and all bets are off at that point in time. And so, this is not really. You're dealing there again with this group of people, these homesteaders and everything else are the closest to the earth that most people really are. And you turn back in time and how it was looking. And the best thing a homesteader, rancher, farmer could do is get into like October. Can't get another bale of hay crammed into the barn. The grain bins are overflowing. There's plenty of bedding straws and shavings and everything else like this. You're ready. We're ready for winter. We can ride this thing out. We've got enough to get through the winter. That's a pretty good feeling. And if a person sets that as their goal and knows that when you get to there, you have, an inner peace, and then you're starting to approach, a modified version of self-sufficiency, essentially, at a pretty high level.
And one of the things I was going to bring up is we touched on it. Actually, Amy, you brought it up a little bit, but one of the things that got me thinking about this was the fact of that raid with Trump, and it's not the fact that it's him. It's the fact that they did that. And it seemed like they kind of went over the top where they probably could have worked that kind of stuff out. And at least 20, 30 years ago, they'd find ways to get what everybody's satisfied. But now they just attack. And I'm not just worried about that particular thing, but then we got more IRS agents coming in. And I can tell you in the past, we've all had our time with IRS and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's never a pretty sight, and you never win. And and I'll just add on to our personal HOA right here in our own ranch, where you're seeing unnecessary stuff going on that doesn't need to occur. And so business is not as usual. And so my biggest fear in the home world, like HOAs even, suddenly they just come along and say, okay, we can't have animals anymore on our properties. That'd be devastating. They already did it to one zone already. Yeah. That's just an example of just how these different organizations, because they just don't give a crap about the normal person, the residents, whatever. They're all about power and money, including our HOA. And that's the first thing. That's my biggest fear is our HOA. And the next would be our state government and of course the federal government. Maybe they don't want us growing food anymore. Maybe we can't. Maybe it'll be just the opposite. We'll be praised for the fact we do permaculture because they're on this green deal thing. Who knows? But we still need animals, or they don't want us to have animals at all. Maybe they'll want us to all buy things through the government from the white trains, But anyway, so one of my biggest fears, I'm just bringing one of mine up, and I'm going to go to Dale, is government and organizations that control our regions. And so, the more I think about it, that keeps me up at night, especially when we got, 6 or 9 people down in HOA that just gets a feather up their ass and decides to mess us up on our how many animals we could have, or maybe we can't have certain animals anymore, something like that, just because they're revengeful or something got them going, and destroy 100 or 2 or 3 or 1,000 lives on the ranch because of just greed and power. And so that just scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's a legitimate fear and everything else. And to reconcile and deal with that fear on my old man level, I've just decided that the entire governments at any level, HOAs and everything else like this, are out for us. They're going to screw us. They're going to take our money. They're going to take our properties. They're going to do whatever else they can. And so My life is just kind of guided by this fact. That's why I make sure I have plenty of food and preps and everything else like that. People are always, you need a hill to die on. Well, I got a nice hill here and everything type of thing. And so that is a fear there, that there is such a disregard for the Constitution and the rules that our founding fathers came up with this, that a government can go in and do the things that they did. They can do anything. And go back to the IRS. It's just like Rob said, everybody's got an IRS story. If you don't, you will have one sometime in your life. And everything else. But I guarantee it's not going to be pleasant or cheap, either one. And so you got to look at those factors and try to figure out, what's going to get you first. And so, an HOA is just, they're a government. They're just a quasi-private government. And so the same thing is, you have ideologies on both sides of this thing. And obviously, some of these people, they don't give a damn about your personal rights or the Constitution or anything else. And they'll use their positions to run right over the top of that. They're meeting up with some people that aren't going to take that shit and everything. And so, that's what you got to keep an eye out for. And us old guys, we can do it as long as we possibly can and everything. But, and I mean, in Amy's generation, they're certainly capable of dealing with this too and everything else. But you got to watch out for yourself. You got to be prepared for yourself and your family, because everything else that's going on is so crazy. And if we were to sit around, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and said, this is what society and life is going to be like in 2022, we'd have said, no, you're crazy, you smoke crack or something like that. It just couldn't possibly get that bad. This is America. Okay, here we are. Type of
and
thing.
along those lines, we're talking about, government, both of you touching on the government as a fear. As someone with kids, I'm not doing anything wrong. However, I read stories all the time, probably too many stories, about the corruption within the CPS, within Child Protective Services. That
I know, that's
scares
insane.
me to death.
Should scare every parent.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there again too, I could go off on a completely another tangent rabbit hole here, and Amy's already taken care of that problem of getting these kids out of the public education system. And until that entire system is completely dumped out, kicked off to the side and reformed, we're going to have the same problem. So, I mean, we're, any changes that we're going to see, we have to start thinking they're generational in nature and everything. And Ranger Rob and I are probably not going to see the solutions on 80% of the problems that are out there, because that's how long they're going to take to solve. And so if you don't start working on them now, and if somebody doesn't sit here and actively resist and have people go, that guy's crazy, look what he's saying and everything else, right on, I mean, that's what you got to do.
I'd be the first one to agree that I know government hates the fact that we're doing a lot of homeschooling.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they want their public schools funded and they want to get their agendas through there. And so, eventually they're going to attack the homeschoolers one way or another.
No, they already are.
Yeah, well, I know they already are, but to a point that you just can't do it anymore. And so we may not see it in our generation. Huh?
Oh, no.
The numbers are growing exponentially.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, we've seen what's going on in the public schools. Anyways, but yeah. So, yeah, I haven't really given Dale a chance to kind of say what are some of the common fears you've had with your setup and your homestead.
Well, I've tried to mitigate them somewhat, but I guess it kind of goes back to, electricity. Amy said that we got that taken care of too, generator and all that type of stuff. Water, is a little bit of a concern for me. Has been evidence. We've had a couple of situations here for those of us that were on the potable water system that where our supply was compromised. And so I look at that. I look at my 50-gallon barrel that I have down here in the shed that froze up like a brick last winter, which means it's useless in the wintertime unless you have it as a heated thing. Lesson learned type thing there. So, like to probably do that. Water, again, has got to be one of our biggest things. And on my small operation here, I could last a long time on stored water for my drip system and everything else like that. But that's a big concern there. And so, I guess it's just, in the last year, essentially, I've just been driven to stock up on so many different things and everything. And it's just, there's a sense of security seeing, a lot of these essentials and things you have to have, that you've got an adequate supply of them, right now. And I guess probably the biggest fear I have is I really think that we're looking or expecting to see some kind of a huge destabilization of the U.S. government over the next 3 years, probably. And I mean, by destabilization, I mean some stuff you've never seen before and you never would expect, and everything else that will truly test the principles of the Constitution and the laws of the nation and the states. And that's, I worry about that because, in the business world that I'm used to being in over the years and everything, and working with a lot of troubled businesses, a lot of times when a business was troubled and had issues, we had to go in and really wreck that thing out, really flatten it, smash some blocks, kick some people out the door, and do that type of stuff in order to get that business back to functioning properly. And so I saw very few that were just able to float along like we're doing in this country right now, and somehow be able to reform and do what you did. So, I fear some type of catastrophic correction like that, and I think it'll happen in my lifetime. So, I mean, that's a pretty, prophetic type of statement, really.
Yeah, I'm like, I'd debate with you if I disagreed at all, but I don't.
Well, that's like I said all the time. Anybody, if you disagree, please come at me and we'll talk about it and everything. And I say,
that affects everyone,
convince
not just
me
the
I'm wrong.
homesteaders. That will affect
everyone. Convince me I'm wrong. Please prove me wrong, because if I'm wrong, then things are going to be better than I think they're going to be. So. It's that's a blanket societal statement right there. Just not one particular group or anything. We're just going to be in a little bit better shape a lot longer than some of the other people are
going to be. We're having a little trouble. That last 30 seconds sounded a little funny. I think we're back now, but my next one I'll bring up for all of us, I bet you, is another one that you would think of as weather. One is we got a climate issue going on, but I'll say climate change, but I'm not saying it's man-made. I think if you look through history from all the different things, it's like it's been hot before. It's been cold before. It's been like this before. This is nothing new for planet Earth. So I'm going to say climate change, but I don't want to add political to it. We're going through either extreme heat for summers, and Lord knows what we're going to have for winter. We've all noticed some kind of changes, not as abrupt as, well, we still got the drought kind of issues here in Southern Oregon and stuff. But I mean, there's other states that are going through stuff. They're just like going, are you kidding me? So yeah, we, sorry, just got thrown off here. With weather, I just noticed when I'm growing stuff and our animals and things like that, is it seems to be a little different every time. So, and so that's interesting. The difference between prepper versus homesteader.
That's an overlap.
That's a good question. Actually, homesteaders are kind of natural preppers. Yeah. I would agree, is because they tend to want to be self-sufficient. That's really what homesteading is all about. So that's a little way I saw that come up and I had to think about that a minute. But I think almost every homestead I've ever seen tends to seem to do preservation, things like that. So I think they're just plain old natural preppers. And I don't necessarily always like you don't really hear me say the word prepping that much here because it has kind of a stigma to it or whatever. And so I like to say, be self-sufficient, like to store things, or be prepared, things like that. If those words make other people feel better and don't want that labeled prepper, that's fine with me, but I'm not going to pick and choose all my words either. Anyway, man up if you can't handle the word prepper. I'm just sorry, or woman up too. But yeah, and Jack agrees with me. There's nothing normal about the weather, and I'd be interested.
What if it's not man-made in the way we think about it being, as a side effect of the way we live? What if it's man-made from the top? I know, there's my tinfoil hat. What if it's man-made because the government's influencing it?
Who knows? I don't even think we're capable of doing it as extreme as we're seeing. I'm kind of just thinking it's natural. I think we're going through a cycle. I think the sun's doing its little cycle. I'm thinking the earth has done all this stuff before. It's nothing new. Everybody thinks it's brand new.
The information that is being utilized to make all these climate decisions and everything else like that. What we've been keeping track of weather in this country for 200 years, maybe. I'm thinking that, climate change has been around a lot longer than 200 years. And so I think our data is inconclusive to be making the kind of decisions and everything else that is being made off of it. Because as long as I've been on this earth and everything, it's hotter than hell in Central Oregon for a couple of weeks out of the year. It's cold as blazes a couple of weeks out of the year. You could have snow butt deep, or you could have none. You could have, and so all of this. And so if you could point, if you could correlate to this measly 200 years of data through which the earth not only went through the Industrial Revolution, which, is going to have some element of change on it, and everything else. So there's 200 years of data, and all of a sudden you're able to correlate this minuscule level of climate change and then point it back to direct, point sources on the thing. Probably not, going to happen in that aspect. And so, it's just like, is there a tax we can pay to make this climate change? I mean, what are we going to do? Throw billions of dollars at this, and they're still breaking ships up on the beach in Bangladesh and just destroying the environment and everything else. So that whole thing, I don't worry about the climate. We can deal with the climate. The farmers, the ranchers can deal with the climate. The homesteaders can deal with the climate. What we can't deal with is the government coming in and loading us down with costs and regulations and implications that don't allow us to farm our property the way we want to farm it and raise our animals and everything. And that goes back to the fact that, that I wouldn't worry about them outlawing animals being, raised on our Crooked River Ranch here, because that would definitely bring everybody together on something like that. So that's why I fear it's the knee-jerk reaction that the government has, that trickles down to the producer level. And once you hit the producer level and everything, then, you've got a situation that's not going to work. And, just kind of jumping back to that, all your inputs on a homestead. Okay, this little backyard of mine here and everything else that we've got, the backyard prepper's backyard. You both have seen it and everything else. There's a lot going on here, and believe it or not, I don't have $100 worth of fertilizer into this entire project and everything. And so a lot of this has been accomplished with those permaculture principles that Rob's talking about. My desire to come up with the perfect soil, my use of mycorrhizal bacteria and everything else. So is there an economy of scale? There's a small economy of scale. You're not going to be able to apply that yet, because the technology and knowledge is there to the huge numbers that we need. But the solution on that is that we could effectively grow stuff like I'm growing at my backyard. RangerRob is extremely efficient as well with the drip irrigations and the fabrics and all that type of stuff. And so if you look at that, you can really produce a lot without spending a hell of a lot of money in everything and doing it. It's just a different kind of agriculture than, the larger economy of scale type of thing. So when you interfere with that process there, that's why, we've kind of got to step out of this box and create what we're all creating in order to provide for ourselves, essentially.
Yeah. Just to address a quick comment from the drought versus flooding. I always question all this thing I've been hearing from like California, Lake Mead, all this stuff. And every time they talk about it, I go, wow, we haven't seen anything like this since 29 years ago. It's like, okay, so we've gone through it already. So why is it new? The
And
only
not that long
difference
ago.
is probably more people are using it. That's the
Well,
problem. And it's being abused.
you're talking about one thing that really, hasn't bit the people in the ass too hard yet, and that's we've got to talk about the relationship between Lake Mead and these water levels. We've got to talk about the effect it's going to have on hydro generation of electricity and everything else. And it's getting to the point where it's real easy. It's mathematical now. The physics are telling you everything you need to know about this thing. It can't be done. And the fact is, you have to look at these places, and if they want to go ahead and continue, like commercial landscape watering and everything else like that, go ahead. I mean, your quickest way is to change how you look at those types of things, is to change people's mind. And I was a former landscape contractor. I made money doing all this stuff, but I think you ought to rip out everybody's front lawn that they've got right now, mine included, and stop using that water for grass and teach them how to produce food on a smaller type of level. So you combine the lack of water and the inability to co-generate electricity because they haven't managed to do the math that says as your population increases, you have to increase the amount of inputs that they need, and if they haven't been able to impound more water because they can't, environment and all this type of regulations kind of slows them all down. But now you have no water, you have compromised electricity, and they want everybody to buy an electrical car that's got electricity that isn't generated by hydropower, then it came from coal or something like that, or natural gas. So do the math.
Right. We'll keep this going in different subject areas. This one I want to throw at Amy because you got kids and stuff, but health. Fears about health, not only with your kids, your family, and your pets. Do you ever kind of get concerned in that area?
I do. For me, I mean, I think people come before animals. So I'm more concerned with my family's health if I didn't have access to doctors and such. But of course the animals. We feel pretty on a day-to-day basis. Somebody breaks a nail, gets a small scratch. We don't go to the vet very often. We've been fortunate to most of the time be able to take care of most things ourselves with the animals. And we're also not the people who run to the doctor for every headache or upset stomach. We use a lot of natural medicine, essential oils, supplements, just natural medicine in general. But I will tell you that I'm not as young as I used to be, and my biological clock is ticking. I hope my husband's not watching this. We said that we were done having kids, and we are. I'm not pregnant. We're done having kids, okay? But this is something, if, just like we were talking about with Dale, if the system collapsed, who's going to deliver the babies? The midwives, the women who have delivered their own babies. I've had 3 home births, and that is something to consider when you're homesteading, prepping, as the government gets doing what the government's doing. That is something I think about. That would, even if I wanted more kids, that would be a serious thing to consider. Do we know a home birth midwife? Do we, people have been thinking about it for lots of years. Do we bring a child into this world? Now do you bring a child into this world? Are you going to be able to, do you feel like you're going to be able to get them their pediatric care? I don't think so. I do not think there's enough trustworthy pediatrics left in the world right now with the way things are. I do not think that, I wouldn't be taking my kids to the doctor if I didn't have to, and especially going forward. Now, several of my children had from what's it called from birth? not geriatric. What's the word? Pediatric, congenital. There you go. Congenital. Congenital health issues that I have been that have been taken care of, are managed medically, all those things. But that I was also told the chances are very high that if I did have more children, they would also have. So that's a big concern for us. If we did want to have more kids, if anybody did, going forward, you need to think about, what are you going to do? What would you do? So, if we're talking crazy scenarios, but for us,
So, very good points. I'm going to bring this one up too for all of us to discuss. Is what are your fears? This is one of my fears coming up. Not a severe fear, but summer's over and we start cleaning up after growing all of our crap, and we kind of taper off on farrowing for the pigs and stuff like that. Do you ever fear that winter's coming and you're going to be bored?
No.
That quiet time's not going to drive you crazy. You're not going to get a little homebound. You're not going to
what quiet time is.
I know, but when you lose it, though, you'd be surprised how addicted you are to it.
Okay.
So don't you ever worry about, okay, summer's coming. I don't do jigsaw puzzles. I don't watch football, and I don't drink beer. And,
I'll teach you how to crochet. You teach me how to make candles, I'll teach you how to crochet.
Yeah, I'll go back to my candles, but yeah. Sure, I'll do the crocheting with you, but
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you ever worry about too much quiet time?
I don't have a lot of animals or anything to take care of like you guys do and everything. And once the mini homestead, backyard preppers homestead here is put to rest for the year, and believe me, I have specific ways that I want this done and that it needs to be done in order to maintain the efficiency of the process and to not be a burden on me. But going back to the health-wise thing, as I age even more, and so I, even in the coldest, lousiest days of the winter, I get out and find something to do on my tractor or outside, or chainsaw a couple of pieces of wood or something like that down. But would I be bored? No, but I'd sure like to give boredom a try somewhere in Arizona for the majority of the winter, and see how that works for me.
Well, it's nice. It's real nice.
Yeah, you've been there, so you know.
I gotta admit, I miss Arizona at certain times. I miss the days of going back, cooking in the Traeger right on my back porch, sit down in the shade, going in the pool.
Yeah,
life was good, and the grocery store was 5 minutes away.
Yeah,
and I miss it sometimes.
Now, see, that would drive me to boredom right there. Then everything. I mean, like I said, I'd give it a try for a little while, but I'm sure I'd
actually. Well, it's more to it and all that. I mean, like, we're right by the Bush Highway, so we're constantly going for rides up north, and we're doing all the day trips, and Phoenix is never a boring area. There's always things to do in Phoenix. So, and if you enjoy dining out, eating out, cooking at home, cooking outside, you do it year round.
Yeah.
I miss it sometimes, but it goes away. So, there's a lot of things that are not positive. Obviously, the 110 degrees all the time.
No.
But quiet time's coming up. September, we start cleaning up our gardens, putting all our equipment away, and then think about what we're going to do next year and what we're not going to do next year. So that's coming up. And so it's like, I just know that Sherry and I was like really going gung ho and enjoying making the candles and trying some new things. And all of a sudden it had to stop. We didn't even think it was going to be this bad. We literally could not do the candles anymore. We didn't have the time, didn't have the energy. We put a lot of money involved in it. We got some good equipment and did some research, and we're ready to go. We actually even started a Shopify. We had labels designed. We have all kinds of scents brought in. I mean, we were very serious, brought in a melting pot, the whole works. And then all of a sudden spring came along, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do this anymore and all that stuff. So, but it's okay, because then we kind of realize that we can, we can push that off till fall and winter comes and actually pick it up again. But not all hobbies or businesses could you do that. But anyway, yeah, the fear of homesteads, of having nothing to do other than, there's always stuff in the winter
daily
here.
stuff.
We'll be working our pastures and all that stuff, and doing winter, fall planting and stuff like that for the fields and all that. But yeah, I do know I had a lot more time before spring sprung. And so that is a fear of like, okay, am I going to be bored? Because this has been one heck of a busy year.
Well, yeah, you've been doing everything. You had changes, in the operation there, and for us, the greenhouse thing, the little nursery operation was fun. It was okay. It's not practical for us for next year. So gonna look for, we'll have to have a time filler there, but looking at some different things to do to occupy, our time and everything, and conceding again to age and everything else, that you constantly kind of keep modifying how you do these things and wanting to stay as self-sufficient as possible. And Amy talks about that health thing, and I mean, I probably end up in health institutions or hospitals more than I would like to. Been pretty fortunate to have been in for quite a while and everything, because the care is terrible and everything. And so, focusing on health, for us is as important as focusing on our preps and everything else. And so it's, we've got to stay healthy and active and moving around. We've got to do that within our limitations that we can do without creating pain for ourselves or excavating any problems we have. But you definitely have to keep moving and everything. And so I'm going to keep moving next spring. I'm just not going to have this hydra-headed monster that I had to feed 2 or 3 times a day out there in that greenhouse operation. Anyway, I mean, it's great. We come off with a lot of great stuff. And I'm not giving up greenhouse at all by any means, but I'm going to do one of the big greenhouse and everything that I got of stuff to fill out the garden, and I'll get the rest of the stuff from Amy and other people around, like that, because I have to concede that was a lot of work and everything, and knew that going into it. And I've done this stuff several times. I always think I could change the world with some kind of a greenhouse or farming operation or something like that. But you just have to really be cognizant and, make sure it works out for you physically and mentally both.
Yeah.
Another subject kind of comes up. I kind of brought this up in the last show, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. But here on the ranch, it probably doesn't seem as dramatic, but fear of crime increasing based on what's been going on. And so I would be definitely probably losing more sleep if I had to worry about young children. And there's been some interesting things going on, even in our community, that concerning, or affects the fact that having kids on the ranch and things like that. So I do, so I'm trying to list off some of the things I have fears about. One would be crime, and the problem is I'm so away from it, so like other than when I used to, when I lived in Seattle or if I lived in Arizona, that you get kind of passive around here a little bit, and I kind of worry about, can I even recognize if someone's doing something not good around here? Because I don't see it that often. I'm ignorant. And so I'm afraid that I'll miss signs that I need to be watching for to protect my family. And so when times get tough, or maybe where, some of this craziness in 5 years is in a level that we can't even comprehend today, and our HOA's gone nuts. How crazy could it get where the neighbors and the community are not working together anymore, where they're working against each other or trying to take from one another? And would I recognize those threats? That kind of worries me.
And that's a legitimate thing, because I mean, those are impacts that are going to come out, into our rural area. But I mean, you have to look at it for what it is. It's a large subdivision. It's got about 4,800 people in it. and our national statistics say out of 4,800 people, there's going to be some not so nice people out there and everything else. And so it's just what level do you take that to? And in my case, I mean, I was a firefighter. I was a dispatcher. I'm pretty in touch with two of my boys are firefighters, and I know most of the police officers around here. It's an attitude, it's a mindset, and everything else. And knowing, what Rob says, being able to recognize a lot of this stuff, I can, and I'm already, my plans of how I'm going to handle this are already up here in my head. They're shared with my family and anybody else that's a part of it. So we know what we're going to do. It's just, hopefully we won't be in those situations. Food, shelter, transportation, security, those 4 things right there. You look at those and line them up in any way you want, but they're all pretty damned important and everything. So equal value should be put on all of them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And with security from other humans, another one for fears is security of our animals and even our gardens. Rob stopped by today, and we were both talking with a friend here on the ranch who was also here, and she was talking about trouble with coyotes. So when you talk about security, you have predators for your livestock, and you can boil that even down to, grasshoppers eating your potatoes, or little bunny foo-foo cottontail from the field across the road eating your cabbage. So, and those are legitimate fears too.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all about, personal
hornworms.
Yes,
I found one hornworm in my mess of tomatoes out here, just one, and the chickens they didn't know what to do with it. A couple of them finally ate it and everything. But yeah, so I mean, it's all the overall type of thing, and I mean, you both know my area. People walk around the back, up there around the common areas and everything. I've seen them. I keep an eye on them. Are they interested in something that's in my yard? Well, maybe they are. But they probably haven't seen the trail cameras that are out there. So I've got a pretty good idea. Yeah, I've got a pretty good idea who's out there and everything. So that is important. It's something that is a lifestyle. You should just be living that way all the time and everything. And once you do that, it just becomes second nature. It's a whole lot easier. And it has to be. Absolutely. If you're not in charge of your own and your family's personal security right now, nobody else is.
Yeah.
And the point with the end of the show here is I want to point out that we're not trying to fearmonger at all. It's just we want to talk about, we always talk about the fun things. In fact, before we started the show, I should have let everybody talk a little bit more about some of the things they're growing and stuff. But, each show we kind of look at different aspects and try to focus on a particular subject. So maybe the word fear is not so much the word that we should have used today as it is common sense things and concerns and solutions. But anyway, you got to make a thumbnail. It's got to be like dramatic. So we had to put fear in there.
Straight up.
How that goes. We wouldn't do clickbait, would we? But anyway, guys,
only if it works.
Yeah.
Good discussion. It's too bad we didn't get John and Debbie here. I'm sure we'll get them on the next show. But anyway, I want to thank the panel for your feedback today. There was a lot of stuff there. It's a lot to take in what we just talked about. Aimee, you brought some great. I love the fact that we have other other sexes on this show other than just guys, because you brought up really good stuff that we would have never even got into and stuff. And so you really brought a lot to the show. We appreciate it, and I'm glad. So I'm gonna wrap up the show actually on time. I think pretty close. So, guys, I want to thank you once again for being on the panel. Thank you, the people who have been watching. Please take the time to like, subscribe, and share our videos all over the whole wide world. We'd appreciate it, guys. So have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching our video. Please take the time to like, subscribe, and